have a warrant. Step aside.
Then show me the warrant.
We don't have to show you anything. You're interfering with a police investigation.
And you're violating the Fourth Amendment. That's federal law.
He had no idea. The black woman standing in that doorway had sent 18 cops to federal prison in the past 4 years. And in the next 26 minutes, she was about to show his entire unit what a federal case looks like. 7:15 a.m., Saturday morning, Chicago. 3 narcotics officers standing outside a converted firehouse. They think they're about to execute a routine drug raid. They don't know the woman behind that door just sent 18 cops to federal prison. Don't know she specializes in prosecuting people exactly like them. And they have absolutely no idea the search warrant in their hands is fraudulent from line 1 to the signature. 26 minutes. That's all it takes to end a career. Maya Chen, 32 years old, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Northern District of Illinois. Not a household name, but among criminal defense attorneys in Chicago, she has a nickname, the Warrant Killer. Yale Law School graduate, top 5% of her class. Senior year, big law firms offer $280,000 annually. She turned down every offer, chose the Department of Justice at $68,000. Why? She remembers the face of every cop who pulled over her father. 14 times in 3 years, no traffic violations, just a black man driving an old Honda Accord through white suburbs. She decided she'd become the person with the power to put people like that in front of a jury. Public Corruption Unit, the division that prosecutes government officials who abuse their power. Maya chose to focus on one specific type of criminal, dirty cops. 4 years at DOJ, 18 officers in prison. Combined sentences, 240 years. Conviction rate in warrant fraud cases, 91%. A number most prosecutors in the corruption unit never touch. She wrote a legal memo that changed how federal courts evaluate qualified immunity defenses for police officers. That memo has been cited in 23 appellate decisions. She testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee twice on police accountability. Police unions petitioned to have her recused from cases involving their officers. Request denied. But here's what makes Maya truly dangerous. She doesn't just know the law. She
knows how cops work. 400 hours riding along with patrol units, learning their tactics from the inside, watching how they write reports, how they justify stops, how they manufacture reasonable suspicion from nothing. 6,000 police reports read. She can spot patterns. She knows how officers massage probable cause. She can identify a falsified warrant application from a mile away. And she's an expert on Title 18 U.S.C. 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. The statute most cops don't think applies to them until they're facing Maya Chen in federal court. She lives in a converted firehouse building in West Loop. Bought it 3 years ago. Upper loft is hers. Downstairs unit rented by Marcus Liu, 29 years old, graphic designer, Puerto Rican. Pays rent on time, quiet, keeps to himself. They're normal neighbors, sign for each other's packages, say hello on the stairs. Marcus helped her carry groceries up once. She signed for a delivery for him once. That's it. Maya doesn't know Marcus has a brother. Doesn't know that brother, Rico Liu, is being tracked by the DEA for suspected fentanyl distribution. Doesn't know Rico visited this building once, stayed 22 minutes, left carrying a gym bag. Once, just once. But for Chicago PD's narcotics unit, once is enough to turn suspicion into evidence, enough to write a search warrant, enough to bang on someone's door on a Saturday morning. And that Saturday morning, 3 officers from Chicago Narcotics are about to knock on her door with a warrant fabricated from start to finish. The warrant in Detective Travis Kellerman's pocket was built on a lie. Chicago PD Narcotics Unit had been tracking Rico Liu for 5 months, suspected fentanyl distribution. They documented his movements, his associates, his pattern. And one afternoon in late September, they watched him enter a converted firehouse in West Loop. 22 minutes inside, came out carrying a gym bag. That was it. 1 visit, 22 minutes, 1 gym bag. Detective Kellerman, 39 years old, 14 years on the force, made his decision immediately. Drugs are in that building. He didn't know which unit.
Upper or lower. He had no informant, no controlled buys, no corroborating evidence, just 1 visit by 1 suspect carrying 1 bag. So he did what he'd done dozens of times before. He wrote a warrant application and dressed up assumptions as facts. The application claimed confidential informant number 447 had confirmed narcotics storage at the location. CI number 447 didn't exist. It claimed multiple controlled buys had occurred at the address over the past 60 days. 0 controlled buys had ever occurred. It claimed surveillance indicated heavy foot traffic consistent with drug distribution. 1 visit in 5 months equals heavy traffic, apparently. Friday afternoon, 4:47 p.m., Kellerman submitted the application to Magistrate Judge Alan Winters. Judge Winters was rushing, weekend traffic waiting, stack of paperwork to clear before 5. He skimmed the warrant, saw CI confirmed, saw controlled buys, assumed probable cause was solid. He signed it. The warrant authorized search of the entire building, both residential units, not the upper unit, not the lower unit, both. A general warrant, exactly the kind the Fourth Amendment was written to prohibit. Kellerman walked out with the signed warrant at 4:54 p.m., 6 minutes from submission to approval. Saturday morning, 7:15 a.m. Maya had been out for a run, 6 miles through Grand Park. Back home, shower, coffee brewing in the kitchen, hair still damp, sweatpants and a t-shirt. Then she heard it. Not a knock, pounding, 3 heavy strikes that echoed through the converted firehouse. She walked to the window. 3 figures in tactical gear, vests with police printed across the chest. 1 hand on the doorframe, 1 hand near a holster. Maya opened the door, chains still latched. Through the 6-inch gap, she could see them clearly. Detective Kellerman, mid-30s, buzz cut, squared jaw. Officer Nina Reyes, late 20s, blonde ponytail, hand on her radio. Officer Jamal Ford, early 30s, standing slightly behind, scanning the hallway. Kellerman spoke first. "We have a warrant to search this property. Step aside." Maya's response was immediate. "Then show me the warrant." Kellerman's jaw tightened. "We don't have to show you anything. We're executing."
La for search. Maya's voice remained calm, even, not arguing, but stating. Actually, under the Fourth Amendment, you're required to present the warrant before entry. Kellerman escalated. "Lady, you're interfering with a police investigation. That's a crime." Maya didn't flinch. "And conducting a warrantless search is a constitutional violation. That's law." Kellerman's face flushed. Most people backed down by now. Most people got nervous when officers used words like crime and interfering. This woman wasn't nervous. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Maya's answer came without hesitation. "Maya Chen, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Public Corruption Unit. I prosecute corrupt police officers for a living." She paused, letting that sink in. "And if you enter this building without showing me a valid warrant, I'll have federal charges filed against you by Monday morning." That's not a threat. That's a promise backed by the Department of Justice. Kellerman froze. He looked at Reyes, looked at Ford. Both officers stepped back slightly. They'd heard the words federal charges. They understood what that meant. Kellerman reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded document, held it up to the gap in the door. "Slide it under the door," Maya said. Kellerman hesitated, then crouched and slid the warrant underneath. Maya picked it up, unfolded it, started reading. The hallway went silent. Kellerman stood there. Reyes shifted her weight. Ford looked at his boots. 2 minutes, 14 seconds. No one spoke. The only sound was Maya turning pages. When she looked up, her expression had changed. Not anger, something colder. Recognition. She wasn't looking at a mistake. She was looking at evidence of a crime. Maya opened the door fully, stepped into the hallway, warrant in hand. "Who is confidential informant number 447? Kellerman's response came quickly. "That's classified. I can't reveal CI identity." Maya nodded. "That's fine. I'll subpoena the CI's identity in federal court. And when there's no CI, you know what happens next." Kellerman said nothing. "This warrant claims multiple controlled buys occurred at this location. What were the dates?" Maya asked. "That information is in the case file," Kellerman replied. "Case number." Kellerman gave her a number. She didn't write it down, just held his stare. "Which unit are you searching? Upper or lower?" Kellerman answered, "Both." Maya's voice sharpened. "Based on what specific evidence? You just told me you have CI information and controlled buys, but you don't know which unit? That's a general warrant, prohibited by the Fourth Amendment since 1791. Kellerman's face was red now, not from cold, from pressure. Maya continued, And this warrant was signed by Judge Winters. Kellerman confirmed. Yes. Maya smiled, not happy. The smile you give someone whose career just ended. I know Judge Winters. He's extremely careful about warrant applications. He would never sign something this sloppy unless someone misrepresented the facts to him. She paused. You're Detective Kellerman, correct? He nodded. The same Detective Kellerman investigated twice by Internal Affairs for questionable search warrants. Silence. Complete silence. Reyes looked at Ford. Ford looked at the floor. Maya gave him two options. 1. You walk away right now. I file a complaint with your department and the U.S. Attorney's Office. There will be an investigation. 2. You try to execute this defective warrant, and I personally ensure federal criminal charges are filed under Title 18, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Maximum sentence, 10 years. She paused. Choose carefully. Choose quickly. Reyes looked at Kellerman. Ford looked at Kellerman. Kellerman looked at the warrant in Maya's hands. He looked at the door behind her, thought about what might be inside, thought about what federal prison looks like. We're leaving, he said finally. Maya replied, and keeping the warrant as evidence. Kellerman tried one last time. We need that. Maya's response was final. I'm a federal prosecutor. I'm seizing evidence of a federal crime. Have your sergeant call my office if there's a problem. Kellerman turned, walked toward the elevator. Reyes and Ford followed. The door closed. 7:41 a.m. Kellerman didn't know that in the next 19 minutes, his career would be over before he reached the precinct. The door closed at 7:41 a.m. Maya stood in her hallway for 2
seconds. Then she walked to her desk and made 3 phone calls that would dismantle an entire police unit. The first call went to her supervisor, AUSA Thomas Brenner. He picked up on the second ring. Maya's voice was calm but urgent. Tom, 3 CPD narcotics officers just tried to execute a fraudulent warrant at my building. Brenner's response was immediate concern. Your building? Are you okay? Maya confirmed she was fine. The officers had left, but the warrant was fabricated. No real CI, no controlled buys, general warrant for the entire building, submitted Friday afternoon when a magistrate would be rushing to leave. Brenner didn't hesitate. Send me everything, photos of the warrant, names of the officers. I'm calling FBI right now. The second call went to FBI Public Corruption Task Force. Agent Lisa Kwan answered immediately. Maya identified herself and explained the situation. Detective Travis Kellerman from CPD Narcotics had just attempted a Fourth Amendment violation at her residence using a fabricated warrant. There was a pause on the line, then Agent Kwan's voice came back with barely concealed excitement. Kellerman? Travis Kellerman from Narcotics? When Maya confirmed, Kwan revealed something crucial. Maya, we've had our eyes on Kellerman's unit for 8 months. We suspected warrant fraud, but couldn't get a solid case. You just gave us what we needed. The third call went to Chicago PD Internal Affairs. Commander Robert Hayes picked up on the fourth ring. Maya identified herself and reported the warrant fraud incident involving Detective Kellerman, Officer Reyes, and Officer Ford from Narcotics. She had the original warrant as evidence and needed an immediate investigation. Hayes promised to open the case that morning. By 8:05 a.m., barely 24 minutes after the confrontation ended, 3 separate investigations had been initiated. Kellerman didn't know it yet. He was sitting in his patrol car 3 blocks away, hands shaking on the steering wheel, trying to figure out what had just happened. Monday morning, 9 a.m., Kellerman was called to the commander's office. He walked in expecting a routine briefing. Instead, Commander Hayes was standing with 2
Affairs investigators. The words came fast and final. Detective Kellerman. Badge and weapon. Now. Kellerman's stomach dropped. Hayes continued without emotion. You're on administrative leave pending investigation into warrant fraud and constitutional violations. You'll be contacted by IA within 48 hours. Kellerman handed over his badge, his service weapon. Walked out of the precinct, knowing he was finished. Wednesday. FBI Agent Kwan and AUSA Brenner sat across from Magistrate Judge Alan Winters in his chambers. They placed the warrant on his desk. Judge Winters read it carefully this time, not rushing like he had on Friday afternoon. His face went pale. This is the warrant I signed Friday afternoon, he confirmed. Brenner asked what Detective Kellerman had represented to him when he submitted the application. Judge Winters explained that Kellerman had said, confidential informant 447 had provided corroborating evidence of narcotic storage. He had said multiple controlled buys had occurred at the location. The judge had trusted that information. Brenner's response was quiet but devastating. None of it was true. There's no CI, no controlled buys, just one visit by a suspect carrying a gym bag. Judge Winter stared at the warrant, at his signature at the bottom. I signed this warrant in good faith. My trust was exploited. This is perjury. Friday morning, 6:20 a.m. 2 FBI agents knocked on Kellerman's door. He answered in a t-shirt and sweatpants. Travis Kellerman, you're under arrest for violations of Title 18, United States Code, Sections 242 and 1621. Kellerman was handcuffed in his own doorway. 2 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law. 1 count of perjury in a warrant application. Maximum combined sentence, 30 years. Officers Reyes and Ford were suspended the same day. Not charged yet, but under investigation for their role in attempting to execute a warrant they should have questioned. The FBI investigation expanded over the next 9 months. Agents pulled every warrant application filed by the narcotics unit from 2019 to 2024. A pattern emerged that was so clear it should have been caught years earlier. 34 warrants contained exaggerated probable cause. 29 included
fact CI information, many using identical language as if copied and pasted from a template. 22 were general warrants that violated the Fourth Amendment's particularity requirement. 12 officers were involved in these warrants, including the unit supervisor, Lieutenant Andrea Voss. Voss had approved warrant after warrant without proper review, rubber-stamping applications that any careful supervisor would have flagged. She was charged with conspiracy to violate civil rights. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Maya served as lead prosecutor, recused as a witness since she was directly involved, but directing the entire strategy. The evidence presented was damning. 15 warrant applications showed identical CI language, word for word, describing different informants who allegedly didn't exist. The pattern was unmistakable. 89% of the targets were in Black and Latino neighborhoods. 11 residents testified about how Kellerman's team had entered their homes, torn apart their belongings, found nothing, and left without apology. A retired magistrate judge explained exactly what information judges rely on when approving warrants and how Kellerman's misrepresentations had corrupted that process. Kellerman's defense was predictable. Good faith, honest mistakes, any errors were unintentional. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. They found Derek Kellerman guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The collateral damage spread quickly. 3 other officers from the unit pleaded guilty to related charges, receiving sentences between 5 and 6 years each. Lieutenant Voss received 6 years for conspiracy to violate civil rights. 8 more officers were fired from the department, not charged criminally, but complicit enough that Chicago PD couldn't justify keeping them. The entire narcotics unit was disbanded. All 34 cases involving questionable warrants were reviewed by the district attorney's office. 24 were dismissed outright. 7 people were released from prison when their convictions were overturned, years of their lives stolen by fraudulent warrants. The civil lawsuits came next. 31 plaintiffs sued Chicago PD for the illegal searches. The settlements totaled $22.4 million. The insurance company that covered the police department threatened to drop coverage entirely unless serious reforms were implemented. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opened a formal investigation into the entire Chicago Police Department. Their findings were released in a 97-page report. Systemic pattern of warrant abuse in narcotics units, inadequate supervision, no meaningful review process, a culture that prioritized arrests over constitutional compliance. The result was a federal consent decree. Chicago PD would operate under federal monitoring for 5 years. Every warrant application would require mandatory legal review before submission. Body cameras would be required for all warrant executions. A civilian oversight board with subpoena power would be established. Quarterly audits by a federal monitor would track compliance. 1 fraudulent warrant, 26 minutes at a doorway, 12 officers sent to federal prison, an entire department stripped of its autonomy.
Travis Kellerman is currently serving his sentence at FCI Terre Haute, Indiana. He'll be eligible for release in 2031. His pension was forfeited, a loss of approximately $340,000. He attempted an appeal in 2024, arguing that his conviction was unfair because the prosecutor had been personally involved in the case. The appeal was denied. Kellerman has given no interviews, released no statements. His reputation is permanently defined by a single phrase that follows him through the federal prison system: the cop who knocked on the wrong door. Maya Chen was promoted to senior trial attorney in the Public Corruption Unit. She now supervises other prosecutors working on police misconduct cases. She trains FBI agents on how to identify warrant fraud patterns. She's a guest lecturer at Northwestern Law and University of Chicago Law, teaching seminars on constitutional violations in law enforcement. Since the Kellerman case, her caseload has increased dramatically: 29 additional prosecutions, 23 convictions. Her conviction rate remains above 85%. She still lives in the converted firehouse loft. Marcus Liu moved out shortly after the incident, terrified that his brother's troubles would follow him. Maya helped him terminate his lease early and wrote a reference letter for his new apartment. The body camera footage from Kellerman's team that morning became a training video. It's shown at every Chicago Police Academy class now, titled Constitutional Requirements for Search Warrants, the Chen case. The footage has been requested
by 14 academies công an khác này quảng. Legal educators sử dụng bản sao trong các khóa học luật hiến pháp là một ví dụ điển hình về vi phạm khoản 4 của hiến pháp. Các vụ viện được nhắc đến trong 3 phán quyết tòa án phúc thẩm bang về yêu cầu xác định rõ mục đích của warrant. Chicago PD đang ở năm thứ 3 trong 5 năm của thỏa thuận phúc thẩm bang. Compliance đã bị trùng lắp. Một số quan chức đã chấp nhận các cải tiến, hiểu rằng các quy trình đúng đắn bảo vệ cả công dân và cảnh sát từ liability. Others resist, viewing the oversight as federal overreach. Quarterly audits đã phát hiện ra những vấn đề vẫn còn, nhưng đã giảm đến 67% so với các vi phạm warrant trong thời kỳ Kellerman. Không có warrant của nhóm Narcotics Unit nào được phê duyệt mà không có sự xem xét của Legal Advisors từ năm 2024. Đó không phải là hoàn hảo, nhưng đó là tiến trình mà đã bị đánh đổi với 12 quan chức trong phúc thẩm bang và 22,4 triệu đô la trong các lệnh trị trả từ taxpayers. Trong một cuộc phỏng vấn năm 2025, Maya reflected on what the case meant. I was lucky. I had a badge. I had legal knowledge. I had institutional power. But if I, someone with all those advantages, can still be targeted, what happens to people who don't have any of that? She paused, choosing her words carefully. Every illegal warrant I stop isn't just one case. It's a message. You can't get away with this anymore. Not if I'm watching. Not if people know their rights. The bigger truth is this. Most people don't know that police must show a warrant before entry. Most people don't know they can read that warrant carefully and ask questions. Most people don't know that claiming you're interfering is often a bluff when you're simply asserting your constitutional rights. Police officers count on that ignorance. Not all officers, but enough that it becomes a systemic problem. Officers like Kellerman had been getting away with sloppy, questionable, and sometimes fraudulent warrants for years because nobody pushed back effectively. But Maya wasn't a typical citizen. She was a federal prosecutor who specialized in exactly this type of misconduct. She knew what questions to ask. She knew what red flags to look for. She knew how to analyze a warrant application and spot the lies. More importantly, she
had the institutional power to actually do something about it. When she said she would file federal charges, it wasn't an empty threat. It was a promise backed by the full weight of the Department of Justice. The case revealed how police corruption thrives, not through dramatic Hollywood-style crime, but through routine corner-cutting and assumptions that nobody will push back, through warrant applications that exaggerate facts because judges are too busy to scrutinize them carefully, through supervisors who approve questionable tactics because questioning officers is uncomfortable, through a culture that prioritizes loyalty over integrity.
It took a federal investigation led by a prosecutor who wasn't part of that culture to finally hold Kellerman accountable. And even then, it only happened because he made the mistake of targeting someone who could fight back. 34 warrants over 5 years means 34 families terrorized, 7 people imprisoned wrongfully, a combined 19 years of their lives stolen, $22.4 million in taxpayer money paid out for cops who broke the law they swore to uphold. But 12 officers in federal prison proves that accountability works when it's actually enforced. The system can function when people with power refuse to look away. Rights matter when someone has both the knowledge and courage to defend them. The final irony is almost too perfect. Kellerman knocked on one door that Saturday morning, just one door in a city of millions. That door happened to belong to the one person who could dismantle his entire world. He profiled the prosecutor who prosecutes profilers. He tried to intimidate someone who had sent 18 officers to federal prison before breakfast. He gambled that the black woman in sweatpants wouldn't know her rights, wouldn't push back, wouldn't have the power to destroy him. He lost that gamble in 26 minutes. We have a warrant. Step aside. That's how it started. One demand, one refusal, one warrant that should never have been signed. That warrant is now in a federal evidence locker. Kellerman is in a federal prison. 12 other officers went with him. An entire department lost its autonomy for 5 years.
All because one prosecutor knew the law and refused to be intimidated. Rights only mean something when you know you have them and you're willing to assert them. Maya knew. Kellerman didn't expect that. That made all the difference. If this story opened your eyes to how warrant fraud actually works, share it. If you believe accountability needs to have real consequences, you know what to do. Drop a comment. What's the one thing you'll remember from those 26 minutes at that doorway? Next story. Another detective, another mistake, another federal courtroom. See you there.